Welcome to the latest episode of Dope Nostalgia. I'm Naomi here, in quarantine, of course. Well, self-isolation mode anyway, as I'm sure many of you are. Thank you for staying home and trying to, flatten the curve out there. It's very important that we do this so that we can get back to normalcy at some point. There's still people out there who think that they're invincible or that they don't think they can spread this thing. Well, you're wrong and you need to stay home. Right? End of discussion. All of us would love to get back to normal life, but we got to do this or it won't happen very soon. If you're getting cabin fever out there, may I suggest you can always email us and maybe I have Zoom chats from time to time where I get together with friends and have a beer. If you're feeling like you want to join in on a Zoom chat, you can be our guest. Just email me at dopenostalgiapodcast@gmail.com and maybe we'll invite you in for a session sometime. That being said, also on all of our social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Before I start to interview one of our special guests, which I've been so lucky to interview so many of the amazing celebrities that have come on the show, I always ask you guys if you have any questions you would like to ask the people coming up. So as soon as I book it, I'll head straight there. I'll post about it. And if you guys have a question to ask, I will ask the question for you on one condition, that it's a well thought out question. It's actually interesting to the person being interviewed. If you're going to ask a stupid question, I'm not going to ask it. Pretty straightforward. Like, what's your favorite color? Things like that. Something really obviously an answer you could Google possibly. I'm not going to ask it. If it's something thought provoking, something that would be fun for that person I'm interviewing to answer, yeah, I'm totally going to do it. So just use common sense on it, and I am more than happy to share your questions, as you guys are you're everything. You're a big part of the show. So please send those questions in. I was very, very fortunate that I had a phone call this week with the phenomenal bass player of Mr. Big. Hence, this is part 3 of our Mr. Big series. Billy Sheehan spent some time with me while we're both in isolation, of course. And it was, what an intelligent man. Very well spoken and interesting. Billy Sheehan from Mr. Big. And at the end of the podcast, we're going to do a summary of the interview with our good friend of the show, Colin Krieger, who's co-hosted with me several times already. So it'll be nice to have him back. So yeah, here it is, guys. One of the greatest bassists of all time, Billy Sheehan. Well, welcome to the show, Billy.
Thank you very much.
This week we published episodes 1 and 2 based on Mr. Big because earlier in the month I had a chat with Eric.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and he sends his love. He wanted me to say hi and do that for him.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. What a voice. 30 years ago, or 32, I think. We started that band, and it was quite a good run.
No kidding. And I got to say, it's one of my favorite rock bands, definitely.
Oh, thanks a million.
To this day.
Wonderful.
How are you feeling with everything that's going on? I know you're in Nashville right now, so I understand it's been a tough time in Nashville of late.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had the tornado. I wasn't here for that. I remember getting in touch, texting my wife when I found out about it because to see what happened. She slept through it, so it was far enough away from us that we didn't even feel it. We're south of the city, and I think it's happened mostly in East Nashville, I believe.
Right.
So they got hit hard. So just when I was trying to figure out some things I could do for that, then a whole other series of catastrophes, as you know, started to raising their ugly head around the world. So we got to deal with it as we deal with it. Do whatever you can to keep surviving here. So I'm still hoping to get do some kind of help for the musicians in Nashville, but now all musicians everywhere are in big trouble. So I will do my best to do both.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really nice to see all the stuff that's happening online where people are streaming from their homes. I know that there's some software that people are jamming together with.
That's cool.
Yeah, it kind of prevents the lag in between musicians too. If there's ways to do it. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
As I scroll through Facebook, it seems every other post is somebody sitting there with a guitar or at the piano or something. So it's
Yeah.
people, music. Thank goodness that's where everybody defaults back to when times get tough, and that's. I think it's a good thing. As I think as a fan of music,
Yeah.
that's where I go when I'm against any kind of adversity.
It's therapeutic. And same with I find that the process of even songwriting is therapeutic in times like these too.
I agree. Yeah, it's I remember years ago being in LA, and I listened a lot to the classical station in
Mhm.
LA, and it was public radio, and they had a promotion where if you donated so much money, you'd get this CD of a collection of all these artists, and the name of it was just The Great Art. And they just said that basically, within all of the arts, the one that is considered the great art is music.
Mm.
And then I read a lot. The philosopher Schopenhauer wrote a lot about why music is the greatest art form. I won't bore you with the particulars of it, but he convinced me of it pretty handily.
I would think probably the emotions it evokes too, hey? That's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, I've heard it described also as the only art that doesn't involve pictures or bodies.
Mm.
Kind of interesting. It is all and it is also an art that the receiver of the art contributes to by his own interpretation, because you can interpret a symphony any way you want. The emotions of that music, they are uniquely yours, and how you respond to it. It's a pretty interesting thing.
It's true. It's almost better to not know what the artist was thinking when they wrote it and just kind of get your own interpretation.
I know it kind of ruins it for you. That's why when everybody came out with a video for the song, it kind of ruined it in a way.
Yeah.
No offense to the band, but the band that did Wang Chung.
Yeah.
Everybody Wang Chung. I forgot, but I love that song when I first heard of that. Da, 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 is it upbeat and some fun? And then I saw the video, and they were all kind of dour and sour faced and kind of angry looking. They kind of ruined it for me. So
I
sometimes that fantasy in your mind is better than any form of reality.
It's true. I mentally see the music video in my head of every song when I hear it. Like
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um,
Funny.
so in your exciting career, remembering that you played with David Lee Roth early on, how did that experience with David Lee Roth shape you for where you are today?
Well, it was like getting a PhD in showbiz.
Mm.
In Dave was a grand master, but he's also was also a fun and intelligent, great storyteller, great conversationalist. Out at night, sitting around a table at a bar or a club, it was a riot. Always, we would just let Dave, just let him go, and he would go, and we would all be supremely entertained. And quite a Renaissance man too. He was always involved in something that was way different than what you would expect the lead singer of a rock and roll band to be involved in. I think it was epitomized a few years ago when he decided to do emergency medical technician training and get in an ambulance and go on calls for
Yep.
people in New York City, no less. I thought that spoke about a man who's really an artist who
Mhm.
wants to live life and then reflect that life through his art. And therefore, I think that's what makes his art that gives it that much thrust and that much impact, if you will, because he really was quite a amazing person to be around. And
Yeah.
he's still my hero. And
He's, he seems like he has like a lust for life, and for helping people and just
yeah,
around
yeah,
good.
quite amazing. And a very intelligent person. He knows a little bit about everything, So you start talking about nuclear physics, he'll probably have a couple of ways he's going to chime in on it.
That's awesome. Do you have any scandalous stories from those days?
Tons,
Ones that you can
hundreds.
actually share?
Unfortunately, I don't. Well, most of my stories, in general, whether they're scandalous or not,
Mhm.
um, we, they're mostly performance art. So a lot of people in interviews, they ask me to tell them the story. I say, I really can't. you got to be there at a table, have a couple glasses of wine and a meal, and hang out and have people, and then they develop, and then
Mm.
they start coming. So I, as much as I would love to write them down or recite them, you kind of have to be there. It's kind of a performance art. So I apologize that I can't necessarily perform. My dad was a recitationist as a young man, and he would recite poems and stories as a young
Huh.
man traveling around, and that's how he would earn his money sometimes. So as a kid, we remember him telling us his stories, and we would laugh. We know the punchline of the story every time. We'd still laugh all over again on the 50th time we heard it. But I got my storytelling chops from him. He's an Irishman. His dad came right from Ireland, so the gift of gab, the Irish kind of uh, uh, thing that the Irish people do with storytelling and authors and such. That he was very good at that. I picked that up from him quite a bit. But on the other hand, stories being scandalous, I would like to just reassure your listeners that there was never anything disrespectful went on. we
Yeah.
we had a riot. We had the time of our lives. All of us were consenting adults, and we always were kind and genteel and courteous towards our all of our friends. And uh, you can pick up the gist of what I'm generally
Yes.
referring to. But it was always done with good nature and with respect and enjoyment. And a lot of the young ladies that I met back in those days are still my friends to this day, and they've got kids in college, and they're married and having wonderful lives. And they're, we still drop each other a line once in a while. And so it was never a foul, evil thing. It was we had a blast, but we really did it the right way. And even there were two buses on the tour. Dave had his bus with him and his manager,
Mm.
and the other bus was the band. So on our bus, we had a riot. But there was never any drugs involved. There's no dope smoking or cocaine. I haven't
Mhm.
even had an aspirin since 1971. Maybe we'd be drinking wine and having beers and having a fun, having a great time. Uh, in all fairness, I can't vouch for what was going on in the other bus because I just simply don't know. But
Yeah.
but our bus was pretty clean cut in that respect. No drugs involved, and again, we were always respectful to any young lady that might be accompanying us at any given time for an enjoyable time or what have you.
That's lovely to hear. You enjoy life, have a great time, and then just, have good memories to talk about later, and no one gets hurt. I like that.
Yeah, I love that, and everybody's still friends. I
Yeah.
remember two young ladies at the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and they did a documentary on the Rainbow that's on Netflix right now,
Oh, good.
and
I
that
need
that
stuff
was
to
my
watch.
go-to place for 10 years. I was there always. It was a part of the scenery. That they declared me to be the mayor of the Rainbow for quite a long time. But I remember I was there with two young ladies that were both friends of mine, and they were kind of down, and it was jam packed with a lot of people. And I said to them, "Okay, girls, you got to be honest with me. If as you look around the room, all the guys that are here, how many of them?" And they both looked at each other, and they looked at back at me. He goes, "Probably all of them." And then I said, "Okay, now how many of them are you still friends with?" And they said, "Only you." So
Aw.
that was a cool thing. And every time I see them, and I still see them to this day, I always remember that conversation. I go, yeah, we remember. So it was kind of cool.
No kidding. The Rainbow, hey? Is that place still open?
Well, not during the coronavirus, no, but
No, I mean,
yeah, it's
otherwise,
quite
yeah.
a tourist attraction. People from all over the world go there.
Mhm.
It's quite an iconic place.
Especially for, Lemmy. Yeah?
Yeah, he was there all the time. I got a photo of me, John Entwistle, Chris Squire from Yes, and Lemmy all sitting together. And somebody posted the photo on the wall, and that somebody stole it, so we don't have it anymore. But
Aw.
it was there for a long time, and he was always around and just minded his own business, and nobody bothered him, and he was cool. was a Tuesday night, not many people there, and you'd be at the Pac-Man thing and having a drink. And but it was cool because nobody would really make it difficult for someone who had whatever degree of fame to sit there and enjoy themselves without being accosted or as you're trying to raise a fork full of food to your mouth, having somebody trying to take your photo or whatever. It was
Mm.
cool. But then again, all the people that were there that were in bands or whatever, we all were happy to see people that came out and wanted to say hi, so but it was a really cool vibe. It was a great situation. I saw so many had made so many great friends there and had so many legendary nights. And we closed the place, well, probably 20 or 30 times. Where we were the last table in the place, and the owner would just say, "Okay, you guys can stay there. Everybody else could go." And we'd be at least 20 times over there, still serving us drinks, after hours, kind
Yeah.
of sneakily. But we what a time it was.
We've got those pubs up here too. By the way,
Great,
yeah, I'm in Edmonton, Canada, so I'm just like
great.
just over one time zone, mountain time. Um, Still snow on the ground,
Oh,
unfortunately.
really?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, we have our pubs like that here too, where we can be there till 4 or so in the morning, just you know having a
Well, I
good
spent
time
a
with
lot of
friends.
time in Canada, but on the East Coast. I was from Buffalo, New York, so we spent a
Ah,
lot of time in Toronto, and I actually briefly played in Max Webster,
I have a
if you know
question
that band.
about Kim Mitchell coming up for you, actually.
There you go.
So you played in Max Webster, hey?
Yeah, just
Oh.
briefly. Mike Tilka, they replaced Mike Tilka with me. I rehearsed with them. I didn't actually perform with them ever, but I rehearsed them with them, and finally towards the end, they changed their mind. So I went back to Buffalo and got back in my old band again, and we went on. But I've stayed close friends with Kim the whole time, and he's just one of my favorite artists in the world.
He's a Canadian treasure.
Oh, really? That's good. Good way to
Kim
put it.
Mitchell. Yeah, Kim Mitchell is a treasure up here. Um,
Really brilliant.
so from there, at what point in your career did you eventually see? I got a bit of a history from Eric's recollection of the beginning of Mr. Big. How about from yours? I don't want to focus too much on that because you've probably told the story a million times.
uh, well, it was pretty simple. When I left Dave, Ted Templeman was our producer for the Eat 'em and Smile record. He wasn't involved in the newer record, Skyscraper, so he
Mhm.
was a little kind of upset about it. And so he understood that there was some changes going on within the organization there with Dave that were not to his liking or to my liking either. And so I left the band and wished everybody well. And then Ted kind of took me under his wing. And initially, he wanted me to get together with Steve Stevens
Mm.
from Billy Idol. We got together for a little while and hung out and talked about what we would do if we had a band and explored the idea a little bit, but never quite took off the ground. So he's an amazing guitar player, though, and a dear friend. So I went off looking somewhere else, and I knew of Paul Gilbert because he used to come see me play in Tallis, and we played in Pittsburgh. As a matter of fact, my very first bass clinic ever was in Pittsburgh, and he was there. So when he was just a kid too, you know, uh, and then I also knew a drummer in town in LA, Pat Torpy, and
Mm.
matter of fact, we sang the day I left David Lee Roth. Earlier part of the day, I was in the studio with Pat Torpy and Brett Tuggle, keyboard player, and another guy, Dave Amato, who plays with REO Speedwagon now. And what they had us do is sing all the background vocals for all the songs to put into a sampler to use live. Prior to that, I only ever played in a band that really sang live, never
Oh yeah.
did fake vocals. So uh, later that day, after I remember sitting there singing the background vocals for the Skyscraper songs for the tour. Usually we do them a little faster because they're going to play it faster live anyway. And uh, just sitting there thinking, man, this would make a great band right here. Dave Amato on guitar, Brett Tuckle keyboards, Pat Torpy drums and singing, and me. It'd be pretty cool. So that later that day, I went to the office and all hell broke loose, and then I left the band. And but I remembered that. I remember Pat, what a great voice he had. So he was in the back of my mind for a drummer.
Yeah.
And I was looking for a singer and couldn't find anybody. And then my buddy Mike Varney, who was a finder of many guitar players and bass players and singers, and helped a lot of bands get together. Initially brought Yngwie Malmsteen to America. My first major U.S. Press in a major magazine was Mike Varney's Spotlight of New Talent, where he had me. And so he called me up one day and I got this one guy, and what was his name? Eric Martin. I never heard of him. No, played him for me over the phone, and I said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Kind of Paul Rogers, Steve Marriott, soulful, bluesy kind of a voice. That's what I'm talking about completely. So he hooked us up, and we got together, and bang, that was it. And by luck, Eric was associated with a guy named Herbie Herbert as a manager, and so Herbie agreed to manage the band, which was the golden egg that just landed, because he was just one of the most powerful people in the music biz, one of the founding fathers of the music biz. As rumor has it, and I'm pretty sure it's true, Herbie was the guy who said, why don't we sell T-shirts at the show with the band's name on it?
Well, yeah.
Now everybody thinks, well, of course, every band is. No. I saw Hendrix play.
Someone thought of it first, man.
There was no Hendrix T-shirts. There was no Beatles T-shirts. A lot of this stuff. So and that's how Winterland, one of the biggest merch companies in the world, started. Was out of San Francisco from Herbie's little thing. So he's got a million stories like that. Where he really, so as the manager of Mr. Big, he was instrumental in us getting the tours we got and everything else, including our number one single. He was the man behind making that happen. So not Atlantic Records. Atlantic Records actually fought us. Really? Because they had their other artists that were much bigger priority to them. They wanted up on the charts and doing well, and but once we became number one, they all took credit for it.
I was going to ask, what did they do at that point? As soon as you have your number one, then
and Herbie's explanation of it was perfect. His direct quote was, "Success has many fathers, and failure is an orphan." So they were all trying to make it that they were responsible for the band's success, but it was solely and only Herbie Herbert, the Atlantic. Then our next single, "Just Take My Heart," was primed and ready to be a number one single, and they blew it, and it was not number one. We would have two number ones, maybe even three, but Atlantic blew the other two. So such is life.
Such is life, but then. I mean, wow, you go to Japan quite a bit throughout the last 20, 30 years, haven't you? And it's probably a different environment for Mr. Big there than it is here, right?
Well, yeah, people tend to gravitate towards focusing on Japan. But in fact, there was a time in Italy where there were 3 Mr. Big copy bands. Brazil, we played to 100,000 people on the beach. So people tend to look at that Japan. It's kind of cliche, they're big in Japan, but Europe and South America and Australia and so many other places we did great in, and across the USA as well. So, but Japan was a very special place, no doubt about that. My first time there, Yamaha flew me there for a bass clinic. And I had the Mr. Big demo with me. So I was playing the Mr. Big demo as walk-in music to people so they could hear Mr. Big for the first time at my bass clinic. And they had it at the NHK Hall, which is about a 3,000-seater. So I went there for sound check, and I didn't know how big the place was. And I walked in as a 3,000-seater, and I said, well, what are you guys going to rope off the first 10 rows here for the people? It's kind of crazy to have it in this big a place. And they go, oh, no, it's sold out. So what? So I better start practicing. So I went in the back and warmed up real quick, came out, and it was sold out. My bass clinic in Tokyo, NHK Hall. NHK is their equivalent to NBC. That's their big network in Japan. And so I had the opportunity to introduce Mr. Big to Japan in that fashion. I believe it had a very positive outcome. When we went back again, everybody was ready for the band. We did great business right away, and they really took the band to heart before anyone else did, even though we were very grateful for our success anywhere, but
Yeah.
certainly in South America and Europe and all the other parts of the world outside of the USA. Uh, we're supremely grateful for that. But Japan did really take us to heart right away. And but we did a lot of things that other bands didn't do. A lot of bands would go to Japan and think, "Oh, it's Japan. We can do anything, and they're going to love us." And they'd never get asked back again. But
Yeah.
we knew that they were watching us under a microscope, so we hit it hard, and we hit it right, and we did everything we could do to do our best show. Not that we don't every night, but we really were conscientious about it. Then every fan letter was before the internet. They'd hand the fan letters to the guys at the soundboard or the crew, and we'd end up backstage with a pile. I mean, a foot and a half or 2 feet high pile, 3 feet in diameter of fan mail. So I would take all the stuff addressed to me. We split up the Mr. Big ones. I'd take all the ones addressed to me. I'm not sure what the other guys did, but myself personally, I answered every single one, because what they would do is within the envelope, they put a return stamped envelope that was addressed, a pen, and stationery. So just to make it easy for you to write back.
No
So I would
kidding.
take each one, and though I learned early on, the beginning of the tour, you wait to the end until you answer them, because otherwise I'll write back to you again and double your workload. So each time I would answer hundreds of letters from fans, and they're so sweet. I saved a lot of them. I have in the archives. It's the kindest, sweetest, most beautiful emotional sentiments from these sweet people and dear people. And I just fell in love with the culture, and still have so many friends there today. But what an enriching and glorious experience to, especially Japan, because you when you land there, it is like being on a different planet. It's quite amazing. And I just have no greater love for those people. They're just so kind to us.
Ever since I was a teenager, we had some homestay students come and live with us from Japan for a couple weeks, and just they bring you gifts for everyone in your family, and they bring you
Oh, it's
gifts for
amazing.
all your friends, and they
Yeah.
want to make you breakfast, and they're the most beautiful people, and I'm obsessed with the culture. Bucket list trip, I want to go. When when things are back to real life, I hope to go see Japan. That's for sure.
Oh, I couldn't recommend it more highly. It's the greatest place to, again, almost be like on another planet, but it's safe, it's clean, it's easy. People were there were happy to help you.
Yeah.
English is prevalent everywhere. I mean, on the Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, the big three cities, English is pretty prevalent. Once you get out of those, it's not as prevalent, but you can still get around. You can still figure it out. I had one problem one time I was there with a Japanese band, and we stayed at a Japanese hotel in a city way outside, and the room numbers were in Japanese.
Ah,
So I had no idea what my room number was. So I had to kind of remember that it was a squiggle with a line and a little dot, and then another half a squiggle and a little line under that. That was my room number. So pretty funny. But generally, you can get along easily. It's safe for everybody, and you will see some things that'll just blow your mind.
can't wait. One day it's happening.
Yeah. How cool.
Yeah. Um, Now, some of the current projects you're working on, like the Winery Dogs and Sons of Apollo,
Yeah.
is the Winery Dog still happening right now, or is it on hold? Or tell me a
Yeah.
bit about that.
It was Richie's 50th birthday this year, so he wanted to do he's doing his own solo project, because he puts a lot of solo records out, and they're quite awesome. So he did
Ah,
50 songs for his 50th birthday, a record with 50 songs on it. And so it was a pretty adventurous project. I mean, when he was at song 38, I remember talking with him thinking, gee, I don't know if I can come up with another 12 songs here. I'm tapped
mhm.
out. But he did, and they're pretty awesome, pretty great. So we had all along decided to give it a rest, only because so many bands, and we were lucky to have some success right out of the box with the Winder Dogs. It was just, we're so
Ah,
so many that made that happen. So we did a first record, toured our asses off. Did the second record, toured our asses off. Now we were about ready to do it again. We thought, you know what? This is why so many bands. Well, we got lucky with the second record. We had a really good record as well, judging by the response to it. No other opinion other than that from me. But I of course I liked it, but that's I'm biased. So we thought, every time a band exists for a while and does their first record, they've been working on for years. They've had them, had them in the set and played them in clubs, and they refined them, and they're amazing. And now when they put that first record out, and the whole world finds out about them, it's amazing. Second record come out, it's not so good. Why is that? Well, because you had 10 years to make your first record, and you had 3 months to make your second record. So it tends to be a difficult thing to you haven't really lived enough life, and plus you've pretty much stopped living life. Now you're on tour. Not that that's not life, but the experiences tend to be more narrow in scope. So we thought, well, we should go live and do our thing, and then reconnoiter back a little while later, and that way we'll have some stories and some things happen and some ups and downs in life. And so when we write again this time, it'll be like the first album again, and very much like the second album was. So we had planned all along to not tour again until next year. We're going to start to write this year. So it turns out to be kind of fortuitous for us, because there's probably going to be nothing happening musically this year, touring wise, with almost anybody until this thing blows over. So, and maybe a little bit in the next year, but at least next year we'll be prepared. We probably, no matter what the touring situation is in 2021, we'll probably have a record for that. So that's good.
Yeah, and it's good, especially in a situation like this, to see where the positives lie, such as, this is a great time to be creative.
Yeah.
Because
everybody's stuck at home, and I've got a house full of basses and a Pro Tools rig and a Logic setup and all the mics and a couple of friends close by that can stop by that I'm pretty sure they're safe.
Yeah. How many basses do you own?
Oh, it's an obscene amount, and I apologize to those who only have one or still want to get one. I don't mean to be a hoarder, but most all of them are important to me, and I just don't like to get rid of an instrument that I've spent time on and that had some emotion with. So or that means something to me in some fashion, So I have kept a lot of my basses. So I don't know how many there are actually. Maybe I know it's over 50.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of instruments. But again, most all of them have a story and mean something to me. It's not like I'm just keeping them for that sake, But I try to have it be a reason for me to keep a bass. I still got my original bass that was my original P bass Fender that I had just as I was leaving high school, and that was the bass that took me all the way up through David Lee Roth, probably. 12,000 gigs. No, actually, my lifetime total, I was thinking hours, for gigs is over 5,000, but easily 3,000, maybe 2,500 were done on that bass.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, I still got that.
No, I think it's very important that you keep these things and tell the story about each instrument,
Yeah, I should. I got them all hanging up in my studio and man cave now. So someday I'll have somebody with a video camera. Here, take a walk with me, and I'll tell the story of each one. With this space now, so that should be, that'll be in the future at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, and not to embarrass you, but you're widely regarded as one of the best rock bassists of all time. Guitar Player magazine's you've won the award for best rock bassist 5 times, correct?
Yeah, they let you win for 5 times, and they put you in the gallery of the greats. So nice. Someone else wins. So that's a great honor, and I'm really the readers poll winning is a big deal, because those are your peers, and those are the people that are in the same boat as you. And I'm supremely thankful when things like that happen. Certainly a reader's poll, but especially for Guitar Player magazine, because that was, even when I was a little kid, I first got Guitar when it was, I think, stapled together in the founder's garage.
Yeah.
before it was all that big. And so it was always a big part of my life. So to win the poll at all, the first year I won it, was also on the cover of that issue, and played Buffalo the night I got it. So I was in the hotel in my hometown in Buffalo, and they slid the magazine under my door, and I heard it, and I looked over it, and there it was, and I was on the cover, had won the poll, and then that night we headlined the War Memorial Auditorium in Buffalo, where I saw Hendrix play for my first concert ever.
Wow.
And also, then the mayor of Buffalo declared it Billy Sheehan Day. So that was a day,
No
to
kidding.
say the least. So so it's kind of hard to beat that one ever since. So, but it was but the honor of being on the cover was amazing. But to win the poll, it really touched me deeply, that my friends and peers in the music business would have a regard for me. And I'm very thankful for that.
It means a lot when it comes from the people and the fans, and
Absolutely,
it's humbling, I'm sure. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And when things like that happen, I don't. It inspires me to work harder, actually, because I feel like, well, what I did got me here, so why stop now? let's move further, get more money. But just as a player, I still want to get better. I'm still working hard. I practice more now than I did when I was 16 years old. And, it's every day there's some new thing I find out about.
You never quit learning in music. And if you stop learning, then you stop caring. I think
I agree.
You got to keep it up.
Yeah, there's no limit. And every time, and I see guys that are these grand master players and watch them getting frustrated and thinking, I know exactly what he's going through. Because you get an accomplishment, that's nice, but your goals inside, that's another story. That's a way higher and way steeper mountain to climb. And you just can't stop climbing it.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Make sure you talk to our good friends Adam and Brian down at Analog Brewing. They're the official beer of Dope Nostalgia. They're at 8620 53rd Avenue. You can catch their tap room open from Thursdays through Saturdays, 4 till 11. Enjoy $6 pints at an everyday low price of $13 for a 4-pack of retro styles. That's Analog Brewing, the official beer of Dope Nostalgia.
There's just one, and there's no mistake in it. One, no way of faking it. One.
Hello, Joe. What do you know?
There's just one for taste, for that real attraction. One, for the satisfaction. One, just for the feeling, just for the taste. What calorie? Just
All right, let's sample a bottle. And I'll make it 2. One for you and one for me.
Now we're getting warm.
Diet Coke.
What was the first instrument you picked up?
Actually, it was drums.
Yeah.
A friend of mine had a set of drums. I learned how to do the basic boogaloo beat on it and basic rock and roll beat. But the guy around the corner from me was a bass player. His name was Joe Hesse, and he was a cool guy, and I wanted to be like Joe. He's still a dear friend of mine. Still talk with him all the time. But he was a bass player in the Rockin' Paramounts was the name of his band. They had slicked hair. It was before the Beatles hit, and he was. And then when the Beatles hit, everybody washed the Brill cream out of their hair and grew it out. And I watched that whole transition happen from rockabilly, that rock stuff, Everly Brothers and Elvis, to the Beatles. I was young, but I saw all the older kids, how they had their hair done, and then suddenly one day it changed. And so Joe was just a great player, and he let me pick up his bass one time, and I plucked it a few times, got a little blister on my finger, so I knew it was a match made in heaven. So ever since then, I that was my beginning, planted the seed. But But I was always entranced by bass more than guitar because uh, stupid on my part because guitar is the glory instrument. That's where all the that's where all the glory lies. Bass is it's a workhorse instrument. You gotta it's like being the catcher on a baseball team. Every pitch you got to deal with where the outfielders they can relax and be super. Uh, the bass itself for me was bigger and had these thick strings and the amps were giant and you could hear them because I was a little kid. I had to go to bed early, so I could hear Joe's bass off in the distance. Couldn't hear the drums or guitars or anything, but I always heard the bass. So in my mind, I thought, well, obviously it must be the most important instrument. Little did I know it was being a singer or a guitar player was much more in the limelight. But that was never my goal, of course. But I thought it was funny later on that I was attracted to the bass. But I really was, and it really is part of my mentality and the way I think about things. Bass is everything. It's really I love that it's an instrument that underpins the others. That they build on. You lay something down for them to build on, and it really, when you pour the foundation of a building, that's the key to the integrity of that building. So you pour a good one, it's going to be no trouble at all.
You're preaching it. It's so true, especially in songwriting. Like you need that. And I mean, the thing about songwriting too is that no matter what your instrument, the important thing is the service to the song.
Exactly right.
Right.
It's about the song. I have kids send me their demos all the time, and I just got one today, and they go, "Oh, we got the song we're sending," and it was just like a beat and a couple of chords, and there's no vocals or no melody. And I said, "Well, it's not actually a song." I go, "Oh yeah." I said, "No." I go, "Well, no, it isn't." And I tried to explain to them, legally, in a court of law, the song is the lyrics and the melodies. The chords might have a little something. The chords might have a little something to do with it. The bass line probably has nothing to do with it, nor does the drum beat have anything to do with it. So, in fact, when you're in a court of law in a publishing lawsuit, it's the lyrics and melody, and that's what they go by. Something can sound a little like something else, but there's almost nothing that doesn't sound like something somewhere down the line.
I have had people tell me that you can copyright a chord progression. I argue no, you can't. Or else there wouldn't be enough music to go around. There is no way.
No, and the chords for when the solo comes in Stairway to Heaven, A minor, G major, F major, those chords are in about 1,000 hits.
Yep.
And the straight chords are A to D to E to D. That's probably 85% of rock music prior to 1979. It's you can't. It's just not the way it goes. Some specific chord voicing and changes might, depending on the jury, might get you somewhere, but it's lyrics and melodies.
Yeah, and. Instrumental melodies too. I believe you could probably copyright like a guitar solo and such. Yeah,
absolutely. You can like a Sleepwalk was a famous guitar. Jeff Beck later did it in his later years. And like Jeff Beck, because we ended as lovers, and some of his melody lines, and melodies are you can copyright them, of course, but in general, lyrics and melodies, and the drum beats. A lot of guys have tried to. I think Bo Diddley with the Bo Diddley beat, which is "Not Fade Away" by the Rolling Stones. They use it in a zillion songs. He tried, but he never got anything for it because that was his beat. That was a Bo Diddley beat, and it was used in a million songs. And poor Bo did not get compensated for that.
It has to be this way, or there'd be millions of lawsuits.
Oh yeah, it would be
just
crazy.
Has to be this way.
Yeah.
Now, for my time fronting a band, the hardest position we ever had to fill was bassist. Always finding the bassist.
It's a tough thing because a lot of guys go to bass because they think it's easier and they don't really push it too hard. And so when you need them in a pinch to really come up with something, that's not their thing.
And they don't. A lot of them. We'd have a lot of guitar players that say, "Oh, I can play bass." But they don't have that mentality, that rhythmic mentality to do it right.
Yeah, bass is all about the drums. And
Yeah.
if you looking at it as a melodic instrument like a guitar, you're going to get it wrong, I believe.
Yeah.
So I know some guitar players that play bass pretty well, but they're also great drummers.
Mm.
As they can also play drums, they understand about that. And again, the gentleman that I spoke about earlier, Joe, who began my playing, I went over to his house one time. They would never let me in while they were rehearsing. And my big brother and sisters could go in, but I was just a little kid. So I was all alone. The whole band wasn't there. And I went in. It was Joe and his drummer. And they were practicing bass and drums. And I said, Joe, how come you guys are practicing? Where's the rest of the band? He goes, no, you see, every time the bass drum hits a beat, I got to play a bass note at the same time. So I got to play exactly the notes that the drummer's playing, but only play the pitches, but the timing has to be exactly matched up. So before I ever even owned a bass, the single most important thing I could ever know about bass was that when the bass drum hits a beat, you got to play a bass note. If it's the right note, you're good. Even if it's the wrong note, though, if you're on time with them, you're ahead of the game. So that was a lot of it from the very beginning, is understanding the drums. And so maybe it was fortunate for me. The first instrument I picked up was drumsticks and play a set of drums. But I've always been a drummer groupie from the beginning, from Buddy Rich and Billy Cobham and Dennis Chambers, and been lucky to play with a lot of great drummers as well. So bass is about the drums. So a lot of times guitar is more about that other side of the melody, chord voicings, things like that. That's not always exclusively by any means, and every rule is violated pleasantly in many cases in this instance. But it's you really have to know about drums and have a good understanding of what chords are going on around you as well. So to really be a good bass player, in my humble opinion, you really have to be spread out between the two worlds, time and pitch. And you have to know both of them pretty well. And included in pitch is chords and chord voicings, and understand what note needs to be accentuated. And on the other side, time to really be so solidly locked in with the drums. So the bass is kind of a demanding instrument to really do well. But the good thing about it also is if you've just begun and picking up a bass and playing a basic rock song, almost anybody can do it. So it's a great entrance point for people to music. So but getting good at it is as difficult as any other instrument.
This is really good information for all the new players out there who are listening.
Right
It's
on.
almost like a master class, right?
Well, I enjoy encouraging people to play music.
Yeah.
New people or people that have given up on it, especially people that have given up. Sometimes I have a guy come to one of my clinics with his kid and he goes, hey, I used to play, but I wanted my son to see it. And I go, well, why aren't you playing anymore? Oh, I don't have time. So sure enough, I do my seminar, see him afterwards. Then I get an email a week later. This has happened dozens of times. I go, yeah, for your seminar, we got together with the old guys in the garage with a keg of beer. And now every Saturday night we're playing again and we're having a blast. And that's it. That's the whole point. Play, whether you become famous or make money at it or not, that's nice, but that's not ever really the purpose. Just
For
to
the
play
love of
music.
music.
Exactly. So it's happened a lot of times. I revitalized a lot of people given up, and also young players that are being taught incorrectly, but just not gaining an interest in it. And I'll sit them down and say, what's your favorite song? What band are you into? Oh, so and so. What song of theirs do you like? Blah blah blah. Oh, play it for me. Okay, or play the record for me. I go, you want to learn how to play that? I go, yeah. Here, this is how you play it. And suddenly they put it together, not playing scales or playing old standards or things that the teacher might want them to do. They're playing their songs they love. And that's how, for me, when I was a kid, I put on a record and learned songs and play along with the record before I ever got in a band. So there's a lot of ways of inspiring people to do it. And if any of your listeners are considering, man, get a guitar, get a bass, sit at a piano, a sax, a trumpet, cello, a violin. So many great entrance points. And all of them are going to be tough at first, but stick with it and go through it and keep fighting the fight. And the rewards are amazing. The rewards will last you the rest of your life. It's a great book called This Is Your Brain on Music. I forgot the author's name, but I actually communicated with him a little bit after I think I'd posted about it at one point, and he contacted me. And it's just amazing what the music can do for the mind and your sensibilities. And many old folks in nursing homes that are basically dead to the world other than their heart beating and their lungs sucking in air still. And you play them a song from their youth and they come alive. And they remember the lyrics. They don't remember the name of anyone they've met in the last 20 years, but they remember the lyrics and who the lead singer was and what label they were on. And it's amazing the direct line music has. My mom was about to pass away in hospice at my brother's home maybe, I don't know, about 7 years ago. And we're all kind of sitting around and there with her and comforting her. And I had my iTunes collection on my laptop with me. And my sister Mary Ann goes, put some Sinatra on. My mom was a huge Sinatra fan. I put it on. My mom was drifting in and out of consciousness. Oh, yeah, that was the song that, and she knew all about the song and who else sang it and, who the orchestra leader was. And I instantly remember everything about it as if she was 16 years old. Amazing.
That's a beautiful story. Yeah. Like it's a powerful thing. And it's always, I've said to myself, how do I remember lyrics from 30 years ago?
I know.
No problem. It's just unreal.
It's amazing. And all I need to hear is the first millisecond of a recording, and I instantly know who it is. And
I love that.
We play Stump the Band, where you sit around and just hit the song. Who can guess it first?
I love playing that game.
Oh, it's so great. Years ago, a couple of my friends are like that too, or all music buffs. And so, okay, here's one for you. And I put it on, and the song opens up with a hi-hat. The first, my friend Steve goes, Donovan, Mellow Yellow. The first hit of the hi-hat. There was no other melody, no anything else. He just went, Donovan, Mellow Yellow. He knew it. So the mind and music is quite an amazing thing woven together there.
It's true. How much session work do you do for other bands right now, other artists?
Here and there. If I do, unfortunately, I'm kind of known for, the histrionics and wild ass crazy stuff, but I played To Be With You also. I play some simple stuff. But people don't always think of me in those terms, which is, that's my cross to bear, I guess. But when it comes time to do something like that, to do a session, I always really make it. I want to do what they want. I want to play the way they want it played. And I'll say to them, I can either do some fancy schmancy stuff, or you tell me how you want it. You want it easy, cool, slow in the pocket. You want some bendy notes. You want a little bit aggressive. You want to, back and forth, bring the chorus up, lay out in the verse a little more. You tell me what you want. So for me, when I do a session, I really want to be, a hunk of clay for someone else to mold, for someone else to tell me what they want. Because that's generally what session guys are. They go in with a great tone and a great attitude and basically say, what do you want? And how do you want it? And that's what they do. So I do enjoy doing that quite a bit. There's a real humility and selflessness to it in many ways, because you have to give up that thing that is you and your style and what you do, and let someone else dictate to you how they want it done. And I'm cool. I'm cool with that.
Service to the song once again, but at the same time, when they want you to come in and work on the music, there's a good chance that they want to hear your flavor on that too, or they wouldn't have asked you in the first place.
Yeah, generally. But there has been times when I came in and did a couple country and western sessions here and there. I remember the first time I went in was a young lady who was an acoustic guitar player and singer and friend of my wife's, and she asked me to play in a couple songs. And when I walked in, she had like this hardcore Nashville kind of country producer, and I I felt the eyes rolling as I walked. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. This is gonna be and I just said, and in my mind I said, God damn it, I'm gonna walk out here and those guys are gonna be happy with what I did. No matter what happens, I want them to be blown away. I want to make them happy. And sure enough, I got through the thing and then, hey, Billy, that was pretty good. We never thought that you did it. So in the end, I actually, mission accomplished. I got them to enjoy what I did there. So I must have done the right thing. Pretty funny.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you prefer live performance or studio work? Is there a
Live
preference?
always. Yeah,
Always
live
live?
for sure. That's how I grew up. We played in clubs every night, constantly, just all the time. We did 21 nights in a row one time. We did 3 complete shows in one day once. We played early at noon for the crowd in downtown Buffalo at the M&T Bank. I had these noon concerts. We played for that. Then we left there and played for a Buffalo Bills football team exhibition game. After their game, we played for the people in attendance. Then we left, packed up the gear again, and went to the Club Lakewood in Niagara Falls, New York, and played a show up until 2:00 in the morning. So that and we didn't think anything of it at the time. Right now, we're thinking, what? 3 shows in a day? Impossible. But we didn't even think about it. And one time we did 21 nights in a row, 3 straight weeks without a day off. And that was with singing. Like we did all Crosby, Stills and Nash, Three Dog Night, Grand Funk Railroad, tons of singing, tons of 3-part harmony. Nobody lost their voice. We got through it all. And it was, and also no monitors. We had no monitors at the time. You turned the PA system a little bit so you could kind of hear what's coming off the front. And we got through it. And I've heard tapes of those shows of that era, and we're on pitch. We're okay.
That's impressive. So, very cool. So,
it can't be done.
Were you traveling at the same time with all of that too? Doing the 21
No, it was mostly local in Buffalo. So we would, maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3-hour drive, tops. Within our striking range around Buffalo. There were hundreds and hundreds of clubs at that time period in the 70s. And later on, we expanded and got out to Albany, New York City, Boston, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, and kept going further and further around the Northeast. Toronto, we played Toronto a lot, Montreal, all those places. So we played everywhere.
Well, that's a fantastic career. I mean, all the things that you get to do, it's just so exciting. How's your time looking? Because I just have a few questions left.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I have a couple questions from some listeners. First from Kendra. She would ask you if you could choose one new artist to cover a Mr. Big song. Which artist and which song would it be?
Wow, good question. Good question. I've never had it posed to me before. Well, there's a song called Promise Her the Moon.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite songs. It's not very well known, but it's just a beautiful chord change. And it reminds me a little bit, and it just came to me just now who it reminds me of, because I'm thinking, what artist, what song? And suddenly these two snap together. I'd love to hear Elton John sing that song, because it very much, it reminds me, it doesn't sound anything like Tiny Dancer, but it reminds me a little bit of the vibe of the way that song sounded. Stories are different too. But it just reminds me a little bit of that emotion that song had. So, but she said new artist though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me think of a new one. I don't know too many new ones.
Elton's a solid choice though. Yeah.
I'll have to stick with that one because I apologize. Once in a while, I have to rely on the people around me to tell me who's new on the scene, and so.
I don't know what's happened in the last 5-10 years. Honestly, I don't know.
Well, you got me by probably a decade there anyway, but.
You don't know what you've got till the love is almost gone. This time, she's giving up. shock. I should have seen it coming on. It's too late for waking up. Her mind's made up. I know the dream is over, but my heart just can't let go. She's too good to be forgotten, too good to be true. Before my world is torn apart, I promise her the moon. I promise her the moon.
I have a question from Colin regarding the Van Halen rumors that happened. Now, this is probably something you've talked about quite a bit recently.
Yeah.
But you were offered a chance to be in Van Halen. Is that correct?
Well, they spoke with me. Ed spoke with me specifically about joining the band, and then gave me the impression that they were, that it was a go. Then I saw the band a few nights later in Toronto, and I didn't talk so much to Dave. I was mostly talking with Ed, Alex, and Michael when I'd go see those guys who we had toured with them in 1980, and we knew them pretty well.
Yeah.
So when I saw Dave there, I said, "Yeah, I heard you've been talking to Ed." And then, "Oh, okay." So in my mind, I'm going, "Wow, this is it." But they never made any official piece of paper offer. But that was the rumor there. At the time, Ed gave me his phone number. I contacted him. We talked a little bit. Blah blah blah, and it looked good. And then a few months later, they changed their mind. They said, "I don't know if we can. We're in a situation we change members now. It might not be good." And as much as I wanted to be, oh man, it was my dream come true. But I also was torn because I love Michael and I love his playing, and I'm a fan of bands. When they change a member, it's never the same for me.
Right.
It's just not right anymore. Was into the original lineup, so many times.
Yeah.
Once in a while it happens. It's unavoidable. Somebody passes away. Brian Johnson goes in and does an amazing job with AC/DC and comes up with Back in Black. Incredible. One of the greatest records ever. So it's not always a rule that when somebody changes. Phil Collins took over Genesis. It was quite awesome, though I was
Yeah.
a huge Peter Gabriel fan and early Genesis, but I liked them both. But I didn't want to see anything like that, and so who knows what the reasoning was behind it, but it was just a great honor to know those guys at all, to have ever spoken with them in any capacity, to have opened up for them was mind blowing, and to have had anyone ever entertained the thought that I might be associated with them in any way musically is I consider it a great honor. I'm the only guy in the world that's played with every member of Van Halen.
Wow.
I played with Ed. We did a Jason Becker benefit, a guitarist took ill, and we did myself, Steve Lukather, Pat Torpey, Ed Van Halen. We played in Chicago. I jammed with Ed and Al up at their house one time in the studio in the house. Michael Anthony and I played for an Ampeg. They make musical bass amplifiers. We played for an Ampeg show there at a music trade show. I did a tour with Gary Cherone, a Who tour with myself, Mike Portnoy, Paul Gilbert, Gary Cherone.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Jam with Sammy Hagar at the Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, and which was great. I got up and we used to play all the Montrose songs in the bar bands, and oh man, he goes, "Well, what Montrose song do you know?" And I go, "All of them." It was so great, a wonderful guy. And of course, I played with Dave. Now, I never played with Wolfie musically, but when we came home from that benefit I did with Ed, his son was with him, and Ed wanted to sleep on the flight, so I started to play with Wolfie to distract him so he wouldn't bother his dad, so his dad could sleep. So I had a piece of paper and a pencil, and I was doing some number games and drawing on animals and doing funny stuff. So I remember Ed woke up from it and he goes, "You'd make a great father." But thanks very much, Ed. So
how old was Wolfie at the time?
Oh, he was a little kid. It was maybe like 4 or 5.
He wasn't playing bass yet.
No, not yet. But he sounds good. I'm very pleased to see him playing.
Excellent. Oh, it's so great to know all the talent that you've gotten to work with. Like, You know, very, very
Well,
cool. You're blessed.
I'm very lucky. I'm very
Yeah.
lucky. I've had played with some just great players and also great people. Most everybody I've worked with, I'm still very good friends with, and I have high regard for them for their character. You know, Steve Vai, Greg Bissonette, uh, David Lee Roth, Richie Kotzen, all the guys in Mr. Big, Mike Portnoy, all the guys in Sons of Apollo, just Dennis Chambers, just a lot of great, wonderful people that I just love dearly, and they happen to be awesome too. So it's a
Yeah.
pretty cool thing.
I want to offer my condolences too on the loss of Pat Torpey. And I have a vast amount of respect for you as a band to make that decision to wrap things up without him there anymore. And how has Mr. Big gone about doing that?
Well, initially we Pat couldn't play the kit due to the Parkinson's situation. He just lose coordination.
Mm.
We'd have him come up and play "Just Take My Heart," which is a ballad and relatively easy for him to play. So we had him for a while. He would do that, but we had another drummer, a guy named Matt Starr, wonderful guy and great drummer, come
Yeah.
and do the heavy lifting of the drumming. While Pat was on stage, he played percussion and, of course, sing. His voice was such a part of Mr. Big and our three-part harmony. Was,
Hmm.
unquestionable. It was so important. But then after I remember towards the end of the last tour we did, he was getting weaker, and I could see it was just not. He was having a hard time. You know, we go up the stairs to the stage, and I always make sure I'm behind him, just to make sure he gets up there okay. And
Yeah.
I could see him getting weak and listless and having a hard time. And Parkinson's just, it's like your brain is on full all the time, and it just burns you out, and it's rough. So we after Pat passed away, we decided, well, let's continue to do the shows that we were booked on, because we
Mhm.
had already been booked up for a few months in advance, and Matt Starr was kind enough to just pick up the slack and play drums for all that. So we did those final gigs and just said, uh, a lot of bands, all that's left of them is their logo. And there's
Uh,
four different guys on stage. Now, no offense to them, because you got to make a living, this is the way the business works. It has since time immemorial. So there's no put down on anyone that does that, because and they're doing a great job and they sound fantastic. And if they didn't, the audience wouldn't be flocking to the shows. And then the audience does respect that. But it was just for me personally. Like I said before, I'm a fan of bands. When there's a change of member, it's not the same. I just thought, let's just leave it for now. We may play together again, but without Pat, it just ain't the same. Matt is a great drummer. I jammed with him before he was ever joined us, and just was always impressed with his playing and singing. But it's not the same. It's just a
mm.
different thing. And in order to sound like that, there's probably some drummers that can come pretty darn close, but it's like your fingerprint or the iris of your eye or DNA. It's those things that you have about you that are completely unique. And
Yeah.
drumming and little finesse things that you do, we got so used to them after decades. Someone else, it just ain't the same. So we really appreciate Matt doing a great job, but we thought, let's leave it alone. Let's, like, maybe someday we'll go back and do something together. Maybe just myself, Eric, and Paul. Maybe
Mm.
with a drummer. Who knows? Maybe with an orchestra, or who knows? But we haven't talked about it, thought about it, planned about it at all. We just remain good friends and bonded together by the amazing experience of having that band and having the success we had. And one of the greatest successes of the band is the friendship the four of us had.
Yeah.
It's tough to replace that one.
And thank you for the great catalog of music. Like the songwriting is incredible. I'm a big fan of big harmony.
Yeah,
I was mentioning some of my favorite tunes and album tracks to Eric. A couple of them I listed was "Where Are They Now,"
great.
"Going Where the Wind Blows,"
Right on.
"Stay Together," "Lucky This Time,"
Oh,
and
one of my favorites.
yeah. So thank you for those songs. What would you say would be the album track that you wish would have been like your favorite album track? That would have been big.
We did a song on, I think, the last record called "Be Kind."
Be kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like just kind of a bluesy kind of shuffle. Reminded me a lot of Frank Sinatra for some reason, but it was just a great little message. Be kind because you don't know what the other guy's been going through. So, why don't you just be nice to people? How hard is it? How hard can it be? And it was a beautiful, beautiful piece of music. Unfortunately, is at a time when nobody was paying attention to any records that were coming out, and Mr. Big, in many people's eyes had its glory days in the early '90s. So, they weren't paying attention. But I thought, man, what a just a touching, sweet, wonderful message and great piece of music. Cool changes and cool harmonies to it too. And
this world needs to hear that that message.
Yeah, it's a especially at a time when there's just so much animosity and hostility and confrontation about people's politics, and it's a rough time now. It's funny, families are split apart, and friends that have been friends for 30 years won't talk to each other anymore. It's just it's a tough time. I wish the divisiveness, no matter which side you're on, unfortunately has become a tactic to demonize people who believe something different than you do. So, but I try to have respect for them, and I just hope others could do that. And Be Kind is a lot about that, but it's a sweet song too. It's a cool little piece. So that's certainly one of them.
My soul was torn apart, broken down and naked. Nothing that I tried would ever do. So I called a couple friends, but they can't seem to make it. No one that I need is coming through, and I feel it when you treat me like you do. So be kind as much as you can, and won't you try to understand, 'cause you don't know what we've been through. You want some kindness if it happened to you. So be kind. So be kind.
I just really love that. And another one called My New Religion.
Oh yeah.
I think it was the record that Richie Kotzen was on. A couple great songs off those records. Again, I love Richie. I played with him in the Winery Dogs. I think he is a superstar, one of the greatest talents I know. But he wasn't exactly the right guy for Mr. Big.
Mm-hmm.
It was and if we would have started with Richie and then brought Paul in, everyone would have said, I don't know, Paul doesn't fit at all. So it's kind of it's what you get used to.
The chemistry you already had intact.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it?
It is. But hey, that's how it works.
Fear is a thief in the night, it leaves you hopeless. I believe in dreams, I believe in flying. I am what I am, and I'm sorry if I displeased you. What am I fighting for? It's not my war. Till today, I was in my way, clouding up the lens of my own vision. I gave up my magic wands for the right to get it wrong, and brave the world's collision. Yeah, I turn out my crystal ball. If I stumble, I will crawl. make my new religion, yeah. My new religion, yeah.
Do you have any causes that you currently support?
Not off the top of my head, anything I can think of, but we rescued all of our cats. We have I always have we don't. I'd like to see people rescue the animals in the shelters. I try to promote that on my social media feeds by just telling people how awesome our new kitty is. And our last kitty was a rescue. And when she passed away, I must have had 3,000 comments on Spooky or my little kitty cat. She was 21 years old.
Oh,
I had
that's a
her
good
since she
long
was
life.
3.
Aw.
Amazing. And she passed away. And man, it just brings tears to your eyes. You see so many people writing in, and people that lost their animals too. And it was a very emotional time. And then we went out and rescued another one pretty quickly later, and it was, I think, as much as I wanted to wait in Spooky's honor, that little kitty that was stuck in a cage in the rescue, he didn't want to wait, so we went and found him. There was a couple cages in the rescue place, the animal shelter. One was down low. I put my hands on my knees and reached down, looked down with my face down low, and this little black kitty cat reached his hand up, his paw, and put his paw on my face.
Aw.
And I said, "You win.
You got my heart
You're
here.
coming with us."
I'm such a cat person. You got me.
Oh, man. And because our hearts were destroyed by losing Spooky. She was everything to us. Our hearts were completely broken. So what does he have on his chest? Is a white heart.
Really?
So we called him the fixer of broken hearts. And he's a wild man. He's just the sweetest little guy. And now he's almost 12 pounds. So he's a big boy. Spooky was probably 3 pounds. She was just a shadow of herself because she lost so much weight as she got older. She was ill, and she had kidney problems and tumors on her, and God knows what. She had to take a thyroid medication and all kinds of things. So sad, we knew it was going to come, but this new guy, he's just the fixer of broken hearts. So I've been encouraging a lot of people on social media to go out and grab instead of going spending money somewhere, there's a kitty cat that needs you somewhere, especially people that lose a cat. I try to be delicate, and I say, when the time is right, remember there's another kitty cat that needs a house,
Yeah.
And a couple of people have taken my advice, and they're very happy they did. So any of your listeners out there that are mourning the loss, somebody else out there needs you. So might be time to go take a look.
Yeah, there's a lot of animals that need good homes right now. So I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Exactly. And I can't believe the stupidity of people abandoning their pets because they're afraid the pets. Oh my God.
That is just ridiculous.
Oh, how well, I grew up with Newfoundlands. That's a Canadian thing.
Yeah.
Or Newfoundland dogs. We had geese, minor birds, cats, all kinds of dogs, Newfoundlands, all kinds of things. And they're part of the family. I couldn't imagine driving a car out in the country, opening the door, putting the dog out and taking off. What?
I know. It makes me sick. To my
Mind blowing.
People can abandon. I can't imagine it.
Imagine what they do to their fellow humans. Because they say
awful humans.
a lot of serial killers were animal torturers in their youth. So what about the people that abandon an animal like that? And if you ever did and you feel guilty about it, make up for it by going to the shelter and rescuing some and giving them a wonderful life.
Thank you for that. You're a beautiful soul. Thank you so much for your time you spent with me today.
It takes one to know one, my dear. Thank you very much.
Time to do a quick recap to wrap up the episode with our good buddy Colin Krieger. Of course, we're doing our social distancing, so he gave me a shout from home. So, how did you enjoy that interview with Billy Sheehan?
That was wicked. That was a great interview, and he really wanted to chat. He really wanted to get into it. That was awesome.
Yeah, and it was very. He's very intelligent. Like I learned, I really was engaged listening to him. Like I learned a lot. And I think a lot of bass players out there are going to learn a lot of valuable information, or like new musicians as well, who are just trying to figure out what they want to do for their instruments.
Sure.
You know, that's one of the reasons why I asked him about which instrument he gravitated towards first. And the drums makes total sense because obviously he's inclined towards rhythm.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty funny too when you were talking about trouble finding a bass player. He had talked about a lot of people gravitate towards the bass because it's easier. Didn't expect a bass player to say that. I thought he would defend the complexity of his instrument. He said, I go to bass because it's easier. I mean, easier to pick up. You know?
It may be, but then again, it's probably easier for certain people and not for others. Some people
That's probably true.
Inclined and maybe more melodically inclined.
Yeah,
would be better off picking up a guitar.
But I think most guitar players just figured that if they're too drunk to play 6 strings, they'll pick up a bass. You know, I don't know. I get that that feeling sometimes.
No, it's like, oh, just being able to share that and get the feedback on that information of the struggle I had in a band to find a bass player, and how like we'd always have guitar players they'll come through that'll say, oh, I can play bass, and they do all right. Like they can get through a show or whatever, and they can, you know, support it.
Right.
But they're not really bass players.
Yeah.
So to be able to express that to like one of the greatest bassists of all time felt real good.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
it felt really good.
Billy Sheehan is an A bass player. He's the bass player. You know, he's
Yeah.
not Nikki Sixx and he's not Gene Simmons. Like he's Billy fucking Sheehan. Oh, that's awesome.
He's good.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I'll talk to some of my musician friends, and I heard I was interviewing him. They all like their jaws pretty much literally drop. They're just like, no way. That's amazing. They all want to hear it. They all want to hear it. They're like, I love him. Of course you do. He's wonderful. Yeah. And he's such a good person. And it was really nice to ask him that question. I asked him your question.
I heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. About the Van Halen thing. I wasn't sure if I wanted to ask him that because I kind of worried that he heard it a lot, but he was very graceful and answered it.
It was so cool that he was, I mean, you gave him the out, like if you're bored, you can leave, and he did to stay. So that's great. No,
and he's very good at saying like, yes, this happened, yeah. and not being like, he doesn't throw people shade or throw anyone under the bus or anything like that. No. He's just like, this is matter of factly what happened, and I love these guys.
Right. And I did this, and Ed did this, and this is what happened, and it just kind of didn't work out, but this is the way that it went. No, I thought that was great.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think I don't really know what goes on with Eddie Van Halen or what his practices are and the reason why, but I know that a lot of fans get upset at Van Halen and Eddie in particular because of what's happened with different singers in and out the door, and then what happened with Mike with the bass player there, Mike Anthony.
Yeah, Mike Anthony doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about Eddie anymore.
Yeah,
but you know, neither does Sammy Hagar exactly. David Lee Roth isn't bent out of shape, but David Lee Roth is crazy enough on his own. I think that he's like crazy doesn't bother him. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I've heard David Lee Roth talk a lot about Eddie Van Halen because they did get together for that stint again. When was that? About 10 years ago. They were back together for 4 years.
Was it that long? Because the very last tour I remember them doing, there might have been another one after it, but they did about 3 or 4 shows of the tour with David Lee Roth, and then the tour was canceled. And then I think the very first show or first 2 shows, one of them was Edmonton. So we had friends that went to it.
Oh, well, I saw David Lee Roth in Edmonton. I can't remember what year that was, like 2008, maybe?
That sounds accurate.
Yeah.
That sounds about the right time frame. Because we have a common friend there, Zelenko, I think went to that show.
Yeah, that sounds right.
No, I was like, my respect for Mr. Big is just through the roof. Like, what good people Eric and Billy are to take the time to chat with me as long as they did.
Sure.
They weren't even worried about like a time frame or, I mean, we are living in a time right now where time is a little bit more accessible.
You know, that's true. I mean, maybe the time to get guests is now. Get guests when they're sitting in the house and they can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe now is when you get Sebastian Bach.
I bet you, man. I bet you he'd come on. I've been messaging people a lot in the last week.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
So, getting lots of content ready for everybody on the show. And the podcast is you know what, for a brand new podcast, I think we're doing exceptional. Do you have any favorite Mr. Big songs in particular that you want to share?
I like the album tracks. Not the album tracks. I like the singles. I like Green Tea and 60s Mine is my favorite.
Yeah, me too. For the
Just
singles.
Take My Heart is good.
Mm-hmm.
That lead into it. The whole album is great. To Be With You is a great song. I'm just like completely. I've heard it 14,000 times, so I'm kind of finished. But like Green Tea and 60s Mine is my favorite Mr. Big song by far.
I agree. It's such a great written song. It's just awesome.
I don't think there's much more to elaborate on that other than the fact that the guy was a really cool, down-to-earth dude. And he's a musician through and through. Mm-hmm. And there was no part of him that was looking for adulation or any of that kind of thing. He just wanted to sit down and talk to you, which was totally cool.
Oh, he's very modest and appreciative of how people appreciate him.
Yeah.
Like about the awards and the accolades and stuff. He's matter of fact about, yes, this happened, but he's very cool about it. He's not arrogant.
Oh, that's absolutely. And that was what I took away from the whole thing, was there was no arrogance there. There was no like, I'm Billy Sheehan. Can you imagine that interview if you were talking to Gene Simmons? It would have been like that. If you're talking to Nikki Sixx, would have been like that. And he's got more talent than either of those guys, a long ways. Yeah.
I wonder. I mean, I used to listen to the Nikki Sixx's radio show a bit there. He seems like he'd be an okay guy to chat with, but there's too many
tweets though. Like when coronavirus came out, everybody should just calm down. Well, okay, or not, but he's a denier.
Thanks for coming on today, Colin.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a good time. So with the quarantine podcast, episode 3 in quarantine. Is this the third one in quarantine?
I've lost count.
Social media, we've got it. Send us an email, dopenostalgiapodcast@gmail.com. Twitter, Nostalgia Dope. Or on Insta, dope_nostalgia.
This podcast is licensed by SOCAN because we believe that artists should be paid for their work.
Conspiracy. It's a Conspiracy is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network and happily powered by ATB.
We are a bi-weekly podcast that aims to discuss selected conspiracy theories, alternative accounts, legends, myths, and more without coloring the topic with our conversation, until the very end of the episode.
We also feature beer reviews, lame jokes, bad puns, far too many 80s movies references, geek culture, and general nerdery.
Our real aim is for fun, inclusive content that doesn't take itself too seriously.
You don't have to be blisteringly paranoid of mind control to enjoy a chin wag with your old pals, Greg, Charlie, Andrew, the Irish Madman, and our podcast puppies, Kylo and Ren.
It's a Conspiracy is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network powered by ATB.